Welcome to What's Up at Work, the podcast that's all about real talk with the company leaders shaping Northeast Ohio's top workplaces. We're diving into the stories, strategies, and sometimes hilarious moments that come with creating the thriving teams that drive the region's most successful businesses forward. Whether it's a CEO sharing their leadership philosophy or an HR exec spilling their best people-first strategies, we're here to give you insights you can actually use to build a better workplace. Hit play and let's talk about what's really up at work. Welcome back to What's Up at Work. I'm Sam Clyde Schroeder, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at ERC, and today we're diving into a topic that's critical for every organization but often overlooked: leadership development. More specifically, how to cultivate great leaders, not through one-off initiatives, but through a continuous, sustainable process that drives real results. And there's no better person to help break this down than today's guest, Scott Allen. Scott is an educator, leadership consultant, keynote speaker, and podcast host. And he's worked with organizations across industries to build leadership pipelines, strengthen workplace cultures, and ensure leadership development isn't just a box to check. It's a strategic advantage. In this episode, we get real about what it takes to grow leaders at all levels, why leadership training often fails, and how companies can make leadership development a measurable long-term investment. Let's get started. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
You have a really unique background teaching, podcasting, authoring, keynote speaking. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that, your professional journey?
Oh, no, it's a big, it's been a journey, right? Mm-hmm. So 17 years in the classroom at John Carroll University. And now I'm at SMU in Dallas doing executive education. So all of my clients now are professionals. Those are the students, quote unquote. So love that. And working with professionals, it's been just a nice next step and evolution in my own career. Loved being with undergraduates, loved being with graduate students. Now, a lot of my time is just spent with people actually doing the work right now, with the challenges right now. Mm-hmm. Love that. So 2020 started a podcast, and, it was a pandemic project. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of nervous energy. Mm-hmm. And so with that nervous energy, I needed to do something. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. It's been awesome. It's been incredible. I mean, you get it. You're talking with fun people. You're having great conversations, and it's just cool. You're building your network, learning. I mean, there's been like 7 or 8 wins with that project. So consulting, teaching, podcasting, I follow my curiosity.
All right. So your area of expertise is leadership.
Yes.
How did we get there?
Jet fuel for the topic of leadership. Fascinated by anyone who's chosen to lead. Fascinated by how we better prepare people to lead. Because I think we know what it feels like when you're in the presence of a great leader. You know what it feels like when you're in the presence of someone who struggles to do that work well. Mm-hmm. We'll say it that way. Right? They struggle. And it makes all the difference in the world. And so my passion, really kind of what I landed on is, how do we better prepare people to serve in these really, really challenging roles? Because it's not easy. It's difficult. And that puzzle fascinates me. It just does. So I've jet fuel for the topic. It started because of a book club. I had a boss who Thursday mornings at 7 a.m. called us together. We read a book called The Leadership Challenge. And that's where I discovered that leadership was something you could learn, something you could discuss and debate, and I was in.
How far into your career were you?
This was probably my 2nd year in my career. Had this incredible supervisor named Bob. And you know what? Even calling him a supervisor feels weird. He was just a mentor. He was an incredible leader. So everything we were writing about, he was. So it was really kind of cool in that way too. But from there, I was just in.
What did you think you were going to be coming out of school?
My undergrad was marriage and family therapy.
Really?
Yes. So was fascinated by the whole kind of family unit. I had a family that had struggled at times. And so got into school, loved psychology, loved sociology, and then kind of discovered that this family was this thing that you could study. Had an incredible experience. And I mean, it kind of makes sense. It feels weird when I say marriage and family therapy, but if you think about a team, it's a small unit of humans right?
Right.
Similar
Oh, totally.
thing going on. I mean, if you look at leadership, you can look at that through the lens of just all kinds of topics: psychology, sociology, anthropology, political science, history. You can look at it through all these different lenses. So for me, it was this really, really natural fit. Now, my grad degree was human resource development. So I started kind of honing in on the human aspect of work. But yeah, so... And I haven't run out of energy yet. That was probably like 19. So when I say jet fuel, I mean like jet fuel. It was probably like 1997 when we read that book, 96, around there.
You're working with a lot of big name companies. And what are they bringing you in to kind of help them with, to consult on?
You know this. I mean, as you start working with organizations, and especially any organization with humans in it, right? I joke sometimes, humans being. So humans are being just anywhere you go, whether it's a church, whether it is a group of psychologists who have a practice, whether it's an automotive company or a bank or an insurance company or a healthcare organization. Wherever I go, humans are humans. So there's some natural topics, right? Navigating conflict, building a team, designing culture. All these are topics that, regardless of where I go, people are really working to do that work better, design a culture where people feel engaged, design a culture where we can retain our talent, all of that. So when organizations bring me in, it's oftentimes around a lot of those topics. What do effective leaders do? What do effective teams do? A lot of different conversations in that way.
A lot of times when organizations think about leadership and leadership development, you think about it like a training program or something that starts and stops. You have a bit of a different philosophy on this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. Oh, and so this is another one of those really fascinating puzzles, right? How do we ensure that if an organization is going to invest, if they are going to spend the money to develop their people, how do we ensure that they're actually getting a return on investment? And I can promise you a sporadic training experience every 6 or 7 months where we bring everyone together and sit in a room and talk about leadership, that's probably not the best approach. It can definitely be a part of the work. It's a very, very important part of. But I very much think of it as kind of like a system. Are you super clear on what you want your employees to embody? Are we really clear about that? So maybe we want people who produce incredible work. They have impeccable character. Is that defined? And when it comes to our leaders, what do we expect of our leaders? Is that clearly defined? Do we have real clarity around what it is that a leader here embodies? So they're emotionally intelligent, or they're incredible problem solvers, right? They have a growth mindset, whatever it is. Are you clear about those two things? And then from day one, when we're recruiting someone, we're talking about those. When we are onboarding someone, we are talking about those. When we are having a performance review, you know what? The performance review aligns with those attributes that we say we want in humans, whether it's just an employee or a leader in the organization. When we do a 360, it's aligned. When we do trainings, they're aligned. So it's a system. Back to like the family system, this is a leader development system. And does everything kind of connect? Well, then I think you're more likely to get an ROI. You're going to get a return on your investment. If you're super clear up front with what you're trying to develop in your people and in your leaders. And then it's almost like I can't get away from that. When I'm working with clients and they say, hey, we want to do a session on emotional intelligence. Great. How does it align with anything else you're doing? Well, it kind of doesn't. And I'm like, okay, let's step back a little bit because I want to make sure if we really truly want to move the needle and make a difference, let's step back a little bit and think about what you're actually doing and why you're doing this so that we can maximize everyone's time. I mean, there's this famous quote. I had it in a paper once that I wrote. It was an anonymous executive, and he said, I'm pretty sure half of every training dollar we spend is lost. I just can't figure out which half. Isn't that an interesting quote?
It is.
So how do we not lose those training dollars? How do we set people up to truly be successful and maximize this investment in their people? And again, does it link to recruiting, onboarding, performance management, 360 feedback? If someone has a coach, it's very directed because we know that they need to work on emotional intelligence or whatever it is, and it's locked in. And we have a better chance of actually moving the needle on behavior if that system is in place, right?
How do you actually figure out what a company is in need of? Can you tell me like a client story? You can redact the name.
Yeah. A little bit of what I just said. This client reached out and they said, hey, my CEO saw you speak and he thought you'd be great. Awesome. What are you thinking about? Emotional intelligence. Cool. How does that align with what you're doing? Well, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, I can come and do a session on emotional intelligence, or we can step back and maybe think. And so I kind of shared with them this philosophy, and I went into greater depth. And I just said, look, I really want you to be successful. I don't want this to be a flavor of the month. I want people to actually grow and develop because of these interventions. If you're interested, and it wasn't me trying to upsell, it's me trying to actually help ethically this organization maximize their investment.
Right.
And so at times I've had other instances where I've said that, and they've said, no, we just want the session on X. I'm like, okay, then I'll do that. And when you're ready to have this deeper conversation, I'm totally into it, because my sense is hopefully what we're going to do is accomplish a really nice day and maybe change some mindsets. We can probably do that a little bit, but we're not going to be developing skill. It's not a long-term behavior change intervention here, right? It's hopefully a good day.
What's the difference in the culture when you have developed leaders in the way that you're describing versus having just wung it, I suppose?
All the research on humans and behavior changes, it's very, very small. You got to and so it's incremental and it's small. So how do we do this in a way where it's more likely we're going to actually move the needle? And also, when it comes to humans and behavior change, what's happening in my environment? What's being reinforced in my environment? Ultimately, what we're trying to do is better prepare someone to be a little more emotionally intelligent with their team. They've gotten the feedback. We know that this is valued here, and we know that you struggle with that. We're going to get you a coach. It's in your 360 feedback. We've been talking about it in your review. So again, let's work on those 4 or 5 things and maybe move the needle versus this hodgepodge of mixed messages that you don't have a shot.
What is one small but impactful change that an organization just starting out in this can make?
Are we clear on what is the ideal employee? What do they embody? If you could outline what is the ideal employee, 5 or 6 attributes of that human, is that clear? Is it super clear? And then when it comes to the leader, what do we expect from our leaders? So I have another organization that I work with, and this was a lot of fun, where basically we had 80 people in a room, and they started to define this. They started to really start to think about, okay, what do we want from a frontline employee when they're being hired, and just an employee in general, and what do we want from our leaders, and defining that and getting super clear on that. Because if you don't have clarity there, then again, it's just a bunch of noise. There's a whole bunch of things we talk about in onboarding that are mixed messages. The performance evaluation is different. The 360 is different. The coaching isn't aligned. And it's not a system. It's not working together in concert. It's less likely to have an impact.
And so for companies who are already doing this but doing it unsuccessfully, would you say it's a similar thing? I was going to say, what should they reevaluate? But it seems like if they're not clear,
if they're not clear from the very beginning, I mean, for me, that's kind of step number 1, right? And so I think that's base level. That's foundational. What do we want in a human being who's working here? And let's be super clear, and then performance manage to that, hold accountable to that, have discussions and really, really work to develop that individual's skills. When if we're doing succession planning, well, we've got our rubric. This is what we're looking for in a leader. How much does Jim line up with what we say we're looking for in a leader? We should probably put Molly in there. She better lines up with what we want as a leader.
One of the biggest reasons why leaders tend to object to implementing any sort of leadership development or training at their organizations is because of a lack of tangible outcome.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what those outcomes might be, or what they should be looking for out of a leadership development program to know that it worked?
The evidence on ROI of this investment is scattershot kind of at best in the literature. Again, I think if we have a system in place, we have a better shot. So one thing we could do is take my 360 scores year one as a manager. We have my 5 areas that I'm supposed to be excelling at as a leader. We aren't throwing 50 at me. It's 5. Maybe we could build in a 6th once we get really good, maybe a 7th when we're awesome, but we start with 5. And year one, my score on, let's say, response to the needs of my team is at a 3 out of 5. And if we add some interventions in year 2 and year 3, am I getting better in the eyes of my team? So we could go time 1, time 2, time 3 on 360s, okay? So that's one way we could think about this. Another way that I think is kind of fun that we can think about leader development is we could give you some content. Go back to those 5 areas. We could give you some content, and I've done this in organizations where we do some classroom piece of it, but then each participant is required to identify a project within their span of control. They have their team, and their challenge is to move the needle. So this was a healthcare organization, and let's say one of the challenges in one of these leaders' areas was reducing the number of falls. So we do some classroom work, and then we arm them with some tools. They put together a team. They work on an actual real problem that's in their area that no one's solved yet or moved the needle on. They put together a team, and over 3 months, we do some coaching. We have some conversations. We do some intermittent training, but they're running their project with their team, and then they have a presentation at the end, and that presentation is, here's what I learned about myself, and here were the results of my project. But actually, you're saving real dollars. So it needs to save time, money, increase quality, reduce expenses, whatever it is, but it's something in your span of control. So then my goal always was, look, let's have this become like not only covering my fees and this investment, let's actually make this a sort of a revenue stream for you as an organization.
Yeah.
So could we train this group to cross-sell to this group, and all of a sudden we're maximizing some of our opportunities, and because of this leader development program, we're actually benefiting the organization. So there's some interesting ways you can get at ROI, but that's another fun conversation. It depends on the design up front of the leader development program. How are we designing it? And that's a conversation you have at the beginning, not at the end. Most people, it's literally a smile sheet, which is just basically, this was a great experience. The food was good. The temperature was fine in the room. 5, 5, 5. Great day. You know?
Right. You have to define what a win is for you up front.
Yes.
Yes. And not just in retrospect be like, I don't know if that worked or not.
What we think we're accomplishing, and with the investment we're making, like one day of training, if there aren't boosters designed in and touch points, then I think we're missing an opportunity. If that alignment doesn't exist, and all too often that alignment that I've been talking about doesn't exist.
Can we kind of put this in real context for a second? I want to talk about a recent win that you've had.
Okay.
With everything that we're speaking about, can you think of an example with a client where, say, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, you've seen a real impact from some of the things that we've been discussing?
What I love, so this is a simple, silly little example, okay? So oftentimes in the sessions that I do, I have these certain quotes that I just absolutely love sharing. So I'll give you one example. So one quote that I love is, leaders create the weather. So my friend Jonathan Reams said that, leaders create the weather. And that's kind of a really fascinating quote. So you could also say leaders set the tone, but leaders create the weather.
I like that better.
It's a strong visual. Is it always kind of 50 and rainy in your world? You've worked for her. You've worked for him. Always 50 and rainy.
Yeah.
Is it just hot? Like you walk in and it's just hot? It's like a desert. Is it just cold? What's weather over time? Climate. What's another word for climate? Culture, potentially. We could kind of make that leap a little bit. And so leaders create the weather. So I love that quote. So in a session, I might linger on that and then really give people. And I'll hand out these little touchstones, which is just like a little weather symbol. It's a little plastic weather symbol that I'll put in. And I love it when I'm speaking with participants who've been in sessions and they're like, I've got my weather symbol right here.
Oh my gosh.
And I say,
That's cool.
so I have like 6 or 7 things, and I say, go put these on your desk. And I want you to remember, when you're solving a problem, look at that Rubik's Cube. When you're thinking about the stress you're experiencing, what's the weather patterns you're creating? You have some of these things on someone's desk, and it's just a flash to, and it brings people back to some of those quotes, some of those ways of thinking about things. Silly win, but it's such a valuable win because, again, it's happened several times in recent months where someone just happens to remember the weather quote.
Right.
And then pulls out another gentleman sent me, they have an award in their store that they've created, which is all about who's doing a really good job of creating great weather patterns in the environment and the culture. So they created
That's
an
amazing.
award. So yes, I mean, it's small wins.
No, I mean, that's cool. And it means it's stuck. It's
Yes.
indicative of something larger.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
This part of the show has been incredibly insightful, Scott, and I appreciate all of that.
Yeah.
And we're going to switch gears for a second
Cool.
here and play a fun game. It's called HR Hot Seat.
Okay.
All right, so here's how it works. I'm going to ask you rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You answer them in about 3 sentences. What's the funniest or most bizarre reason someone ever gave for being late to class?
I honestly don't have one. The weirdest thing would be that people would just show up and then never give a reason. Never like try to manage the
Never
impression.
explain themselves.
Never. It would just be like they'd show up every day 5 minutes late and then never come up and say, hey, this is what I have going on. I'm so sorry. That's just kind of how they rolled. And then they expected me to like have to walk up and say, hey, so that was just always interesting. It's called
courtesy.
impression management. Just
Right.
walk up and say, hey, here's what I got going on. I have class way across the side of
Right.
campus. I struggled to get here on time. Okay, I get it. That's cool. But just like pretending nothing's off. That was fascinating. So it was like a non-excuse kind of thing going on.
It's the courtesy I dog eat my homework situation,
just-
like out of
Say something.
Right, say something. I'd rather you lie to me. All right, if you had to describe your email inbox in one word, what would it be?
2.
All right, I need more than one word.
I like having no more than 2 emails in my inbox.
Do you delete everything?
I clear it out by the end of the day.
Okay.
I try as best as I can to get it down to 3 or 4 or 2. But ideally, it's 1 or 2. Usually a couple that I just need to like
Deal with,
Yeah,
yeah.
I need to like spend the night, sit on it, get to it tomorrow. But minimal is what I want in the inbox when I close out the laptop.
I love that. You don't wake up anxious the next day. 2 is manageable.
I like it.
All right, what's the most overused corporate buzzword that needs to disappear?
Let's double click on that question. Can we double click on that? I want to double click.
That
He's like,
means
I want to
drill
go a little,
down?
Yeah,
Is
drill
that-
down.
All right, what's one thing companies should do to make work feel more human?
Better prepare their leaders to lead.
Okay.
Better prepare their leaders to lead. I think sometimes, the work is so incredibly difficult. So it's very easy for me to sit here in this chair and say, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. And it's incredibly difficult work. And at times we can get our eye off of the human and all of the good that's happening in front of us. So again, back to that leaders create the weather. Do you have a hack? Do you have some way that you're putting your head up and seeing all the good that's happening in front of you? But you know what it feels like when you work over the weekend and you send the email and you never even get back like, hey, that was awesome. Thank you so much. It goes into an email black hole. So are you saying thank you? Are you appreciating good work? Are you every once in a while pulling someone aside and saying, you know what, that was awesome what you did in that meeting? And I think we need to prepare leaders to see that, because they're consumed with everything else coming at them. And if we aren't doing that work, so that's why I love that leaders create the weather quote.
Yeah.
You know what it feels like to work for the person who for months has missed the opportunity to say, thank you. 2 seconds, 1 second.
It's not that
It's
hard.
fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's a missed opportunity. And then again, we wonder why we're struggling to retain people. We're struggling to engage people. Our culture isn't where we want it. It's tragic.
Little simple things.
I think it's sometimes just that easy,
Yeah.
right?
What's the worst piece of career advice that you've ever gotten?
I think I was really working to make this decision to transition out of full-time academia, full professor, job for life, and lacking fulfillment in some ways, and wanting to know what else was out there. And so there were folks who said, you know, it's silly to just give up. You have a job for life. You have total security. So sacrificing total security for finding out what else is out there. And I kind of chose to find out what else is out there.
All right. How about the best piece of career advice you've ever gotten?
So when I was making the decision to leave academia, I was out to dinner with two colleagues that I really look up to, and they said, tap your network, you're all good. And
look at you.
They were totally correct.
Yeah.
They were totally correct. And it was about them kind of being on the outside and believing in me and what I brought to the table more than I did maybe at the time, as I was kind of struggling with the decision. And so that was, but they were like, you're all good. You just need to tap your network and go, and you're fine, Scott.
That vote of confidence helps.
Yeah. Oh, it was huge to have that from them.
All right. This is the last question.
Okay.
What's the most unexpected thing you've ever learned from working with people?
When I come across leaders who have tapped into whatever their passion is, it's for those special people, it's not work. It's this different energy source that I think is such a differentiator, such a game changer for them. And I think a lot of people are trapped in tracks or trapped in careers that isn't that. And then you put them in a position of authority, and it's hard. And so I think just the differentiator that I see when I'm working with a leader who truly, it's just them.
Scott, thank you so much for your time today. This was wonderful.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's all for What's Up at Work today. A huge thanks to Scott Allen for sharing his insights and expertise. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and follow along as we continue exploring what makes great workplaces tick. Until next time, keep building better workplaces. We hope you enjoyed this episode of What's Up at Work. Now it's time to get out there and start building better workplaces. If you need help with where to start, ERC has your back. Head to yourerc.com for exclusive HR tools, insights, and resources to help you attract and retain top talent. And keep tuning into What's Up at Work for more strategies and secrets to help leaders like you create thriving workplaces. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.